In the medieval world, beauty wasn't just a superficial trait. It was a powerful tool, one that could open doors or lock them forever. Your looks could determine everything, from how others treated you to how far you'd get in life. It wasn't about fashion or self-expression. Beauty was directly tied to social status and survival. It wasn't just about having a pretty face. If you had flawless skin, it signaled that you were noble, wealthy, and worthy of respect. In a society where survival was hard, being seen as beautiful could be a life or death matter. A single imperfection could determine your place in society, your chances of marriage, or even your moral standing. Beauty standards back then were rigid and tied to your identity, and if you didn't fit the mold, you didn't get the benefits. You could be seen as either virtuous or sinful, healthy or sickly, and those perceptions were usually based on one feature, whether it was your skin tone, hair, or even how you carried yourself. Power was wrapped in physical appearance, and the more you conformed, the more power you had. Now, let's dive into something that might sound strange to modern ears. Pale skin was the beauty ideal in medieval Europe. You see, back then, sun-kissed skin wasn't seen as a sign of health or beauty. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Pale skin meant you weren't working the land, slaving under the harsh rays of the sun like the peasants. If you had pale skin, it meant you were wealthy enough to spend your time indoors, shielded from the burning sun. The lengths noble women went to protect their skin were shocking. They used parasols, wide-brimmed hats, and veils to keep the sunlight off their faces. Some women wouldn't even leave their homes during the summer, spending their days indoors, venturing out only before sunrise or after sunset, when the sun wasn't so intense. In fact, windows were covered with fabric to keep the light out entirely. But that wasn't enough for the most fashion-conscious nobles. They took it a step further by painting their faces with lead-based makeup to achieve the ultimate pallor. The risks, hair loss, rotting teeth, and even death from lead poisoning. Still, the social rewards were deemed worth the poisoning. Queen Elizabeth I, for example, wore this toxic white makeup so thick that, in her later years, cracks would form in it whenever she smiled. The obsession didn't stop at lead. Those who didn't have access to lead-based cosmetics used milk baths, rosewater masks, and even leeches to drain blood from their faces, all in pursuit of that perfect pale complexion. Imagine risking your life just to achieve what we'd now consider a dangerous, unhealthy look. But for medieval women, it was a symbol of wealth, status, and beauty. While noble women were obsessed with staying pale and avoiding the sun, the peasants had an entirely different definition of beauty. For the common folk, it wasn't about flawless skin or delicate features. It was about strength and the ability to endure the grueling demands of life in the fields. The most desirable man wasn't the one who could boast the most handsome features, but the one who could work long hours, chop wood, and still have the energy to dance during the harvest festival. Peasant men didn't just work hard, they developed muscles and bones stronger than many modern athletes. Archaeological evidence shows that their arm bones were denser than average, likely a result of repetitive tasks like hauling water, plowing fields, and cutting wood. Women, too, valued strength. The ideal woman wasn't someone with soft, delicate hands. It was a woman with broad shoulders and hands that could carry heavy loads without tiring. Calluses on your hands were a badge of honor, showing you could survive and thrive in the demanding rural life. In this society, beauty wasn't just about how you looked. It was about what you could do. If you could survive the harsh conditions and work relentlessly without complaining, that was the real beauty. The strength to carry water uphill, to toil in the fields, and to give birth and raise children without assistance. That was the beauty that mattered most in medieval villages. One thing that united all classes in the medieval period was the value of hair. Long, thick, and healthy hair was a prized possession, especially for women. For unmarried women, wearing their hair loose signaled youth and availability, while married women were expected to cover their hair as a sign of modesty. In noble households, hair care was a ritual that required servants, ivory combs, and countless hours spent removing lice. Because even royalty wasn't immune to the discomforts of life in the Middle Ages. Blonde hair was particularly coveted. It was seen as a symbol of purity and tied to religious imagery. Achieving blonde hair could mean soaking it in horse urine and lye, or sitting in the sun until your scalp was burned. Damaged hair? A small price to pay for a golden halo. This intense hair obsession wasn't just about beauty. It was about maintaining your status and proving you could afford such luxuries. Hair wasn't just the crown on your head. It was your social status written on every strand. In the medieval period, your skin wasn't just something to maintain. It was a reflection of your soul. A clear, healthy complexion was a symbol of moral virtue, while a blotchy or unhealthy skin tone could indicate bad character. The medieval belief in the four humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, meant that your skin's appearance was a direct sign of your balance in life. If your complexion was too pale, it was seen as a sign of sickness. If you were flushed, you were considered angry or drunk. The perfect skin tone was the delicate balance of a healthy complexion with a faint rosy glow. This could be achieved through diet, lifestyle, and in some cases, sheer luck. Blemishes were seen as signs of gluttony, sin, or even bad temper. Having the right complexion wasn't just about looking good, it was about maintaining a moral image that aligned with the standards of medieval society. In today's world, thinness is often celebrated, but during medieval times, a fuller figure was a sign of wealth, prosperity, and fertility. A plump body wasn't just a sign of luxury. It meant you were wealthy enough to eat well and avoid the famines that plagued so many. Unlike today's ideal body type, in medieval society, the fuller figure was seen as beautiful, particularly for women. Women who were slightly rounder were often considered more attractive because they were associated with being fertile. Pregnancy and the ability to produce heirs were essential for noble women, so looking fertile was more important than looking slim. Clothing also played a role in this beauty ideal, with high-waisted gowns meant to emphasize the fullness of the figure. For medieval people, survival meant having enough resources to eat, and a fuller figure was an indicator that you were healthy and secure. One of the strangest beauty fads in medieval times was the obsession with high foreheads. To achieve this, women would pluck or shave back their hairlines, often several inches, to create the illusion of intelligence and nobility. The process was painful and involved tweezing, waxing, or even applying caustic pastes, sometimes mixed with cat droppings, to prevent regrowth. This obsession with high foreheads was more than just a beauty trend. It was a sign of refinement and intellect. Women with high foreheads were considered elite in society, their faces dominating their features, especially in portraits and depictions of nobility. It wasn't just about beauty. It was about social standing, status, and power. Medieval smiles weren't about whitening your teeth. Instead, they were about keeping your teeth intact. In an age without toothbrushes or proper dental care, a small gap between the front teeth was considered a sign of beauty. Known as the lover's window, this gap was seen as a mark of sensuality and generosity. Maintaining a decent smile in medieval times required a lot of effort. From herbal mouthwashes to tooth powders made of crushed herbs and charcoal, a lot of people simply relied on luck and prayers to keep their teeth intact. A decent smile meant you were well off enough to take care of your teeth. In medieval times, smelling good was just as important as looking good. Bathing wasn't as frequent as it is today, but people still cared deeply about personal hygiene. Wealthy people had fresh linen undergarments, scented oils, and herbal sachets sewn into their clothing to mask the smells of everyday life. For most, though, Public bathhouses were a rarity, and people washed only partially or changed clothes frequently. But a bad smell could ruin your reputation in medieval society. In a community where people had to rely on scent to judge one another, smelling fresh was often more important than looking perfect. In medieval society, beauty wasn't just skin deep. It was about how you behaved. Grace, modesty, and piety were considered forms of beauty in themselves. Women were expected to walk slowly, lower their eyes, and speak softly. Laughter without showing teeth was considered more refined than a loud, open-mouthed laugh. The church played a huge role in defining these standards. Modesty was beautiful, and dressing in humble, muted colors was seen as a reflection of a devout heart. Being a beautiful woman in medieval times was as much about your character as it was about your appearance.